It's another race week, and this week we are in Barcelona. Um, yeah, might be a better week for racing this week. We had a track that is an all-rounder, a track for all-rounders, and one that is great for testing as well. But we're going to discuss why in a moment, and we're going to talk about how the teams might want to set up for this particular weekend. So, welcome to another technical setup brief and a chat about how the technical directives that are coming into force this weekend might influence proceedings. So, yeah, here we go. So, yeah, once again, what do we have here? We've got Barcelona, which is about 4.6 kilometers long. And like we said, this is a circuit for all rounders. It's got nice two very long straights and a mix of high and medium speed corners that make racing quite interesting around here. I think key notable corners: turn one, heavy braking zone at the after that very long start finish straight, and that is where most of the overtaking is going to happen. You've got turn three, which is a long, flat out, high speed right turn, right? And then you've got turns four and six, which are then slow, downhill, right, left sequence that you have to go through over there. Then the famous Campsa at turn 9, which is the right-hander. You want to be in sixth gear around there. It's got a blind entry. It initially goes uphill and then downhill as you exit that particular corner. And then the final sector is a sweeping high-speed double right at turns 13 and 14, leading into that main straight where we're going to see those wings open up and some overtaking happening into turn 1. The 2021 chicane in turn 14 was removed. And we're just restoring higher speed flow around the circuit as well. The circuit is got modest elevations uphill into turn 9, but it's generally flat. The asphalt is quite abrasive and high grip, so that we're going to see some significant thermal and mechanical stress on those tires around this particular circuit. It demands heavy downforce for cornering, but also efficiency on the straight. So the downforce requirement is second only to Monaco. And so the teams must just find the correct compromise between aerodynamic load and aerodynamic efficiency here due to those long straights, but also the various corners that you have to go around here and the very interesting mix of corners that you have on this track. Key braking points: turn 1, turn 4, and the hairpin at turn 10. After that, back straight, and then turn 13 as well into the final straight. Though those are the key braking points. The prime passing zone again is turn 1, as the inside and outside are equally difficult for overtaking here. So drivers will either outbrake for the inside or carry momentum outside for turn 2. Okay, so let's talk about the aerodynamic configuration for this particular circuit. Now, Barcelona's got some really long, fast corners, and we're talking about turns 3, turns 9, as well as turns 13 to 14 that require a lot of downforce. And so what teams are going to typically do is run relatively aggressive aero packages here. One of the analysts have also noted that there's a lot of aerodynamic load that is required for Barcelona, with an aero balance that is often biased towards the front of the car because you want to improve the car response into slow corners. But also drag has to be managed on the long straights, and we are talking from turn 14 all the way down to turn 1. So in practice, you're going to see cars run the highest downforce setting of the season outside of street circuits. They're going to compromise some straight line speed for stability, because the circuit is often treated as an aero benchmark, which means it's widely used in winter testing, meaning that the cars are going to be trimmed up just enough to clean air on the straights, but still planted through some of the sweeping bends that you find around the circuit. So what are we going to do about the suspension, right? Because Barcelona is bumpy and curbed in places like turn 8, which has a really large curb, but it's generally smoother than other tracks. And so teams generally run a relatively stiff suspension around here to minimize pitch and to keep the underfloor at an optimum ride height through the fast corners, because you're going to need that for performance as well. However, some compliance is going to be required in order to avoid some of the excessive bump sensitivity and the tire damage as you ride over some of those curbs. Now, to balance this, they're going to need to allow enough suspension to travel to survive turn 8's big curb, without then bottoming out, but also aim to keep the car as low and as flat as possible. And of course, we have to consider the camber and the toe settings, right? So teams here generally also run a negative camber. We had a comment about negative camber in our last video, so expect to hear a lot of that on all of the wheels. And this is just to maximize lateral grip in those high load corners, right? Now, Barcelona's right-hand predominance. So a lot of right-hand corners here. Turn 3, 4, 5, 9, 13 and 14, all going to the right. The front left tire is under the greatest amount of stress when you're going around this circuit. So you want the front camber to be optimized for the left tire. So -2 to 3 degrees negative. And this is just maximizes the contact patch in turns 3 and 4. Now the rear camber is also negative here. It's typically a bit less than the front, and that's just to aid traction. Excessive camber is you're going to want to avoid that at all costs to limit any inner tire wear, especially as Barcelona induces high thermal loads as you go around it. Now the front toe out is commonly used to sharpen the turn-in of the car at the technical low-speed corners. So for example, turns 1 and 2, it's almost like a chicane really. So a small amount of front toe helps rotate the car into those tight entries. Right toe is set closer to toe in, and this is for higher speed stability, especially important over those last few sweeping final sectors and under braking into turn 10. So the exact toe values will depend on the car's philosophy, but the trend is towards slight front toe out, rear toe in, and they will adjust it between FP1 and FP3 just to fine tune it and to fine tune understeer, oversteer balance, depending on how they want to drive those cars around the circuit. Barcelona rewards speed, high speed drivers, right? So consistency through the fast sweepers is key. Abrupt inputs will wreck the soft tires, right? Valtteri Bottas, for instance, excelled here with a very smooth steering and throttle, and he's claimed multiple poles at this particular circuit. But the circuit plays to cars with a very strong aero efficiency. So Verstappen noted that the Red Bull's cars should be competitive in Barcelona's very long bends. And that's where you're going to find quite a bit of the time. So Monaco specialists, those guys who are used to high downforce, low speed focus, they will often struggle at Barcelona. Last year's Mercedes found form on a similar smooth circuit, suggesting that some of the driving styles in that pairing suited Barcelona a bit. So very smooth, also late apexes. But in general, drivers who can maintain momentum and balance, right? So avoiding understeer in fast corners and oversteer in slow corners, they tend to do well around this particular circuit. Now we really have to watch out for the curbs at Barcelona. You have to avoid bottoming out on the aggressive curbs like turn 8. You're going to need suspension compliance, some softness in specific components like the anti-dive or anti-squat, and that's going to allow the car to absorb curbs without lifting too much. Striking the car can trigger floor damage, or you'll be penalized for ride height checks. So the wear on that plank. So you need to aim for a very careful compromise here. Stiff enough to preserve downforce, soft enough at bump stops to protect the chassis. First little bit of a curveball that we're going to get for this particular race weekend is that the new technical directive TD018 is in force. So all teams will introduce redesigned front wings for the Spanish GP. So this could upset the cart quite a bit this weekend. So the FIA's new static load tests require that only 66% stiffer wing elements than before. Deflection is limited to 10 millimeters symmetrically, 15 millimeters one-sided under 1000 in load, right? So teams are going to need to stiffen the wing profiles, and they may trade some peak downforce just to pass these tests. Now, in the ground effect eras, front wing flex was used to shed downforce on the straights. Now the clamp down is going to have to force teams to get more rigid wings, and they're going to lose prior advantages. Now teams that were exploiting the so-called mini DRS might see some of those gains cut on this particular weekend. We're just excited to see how this changes the dynamics of the championship beginning now up until the end of the season. So yeah, I mean that's not all. I mean the FIA is also looking at cooling systems here. After Red Bull had queries around any active tire and brake cooling devices that should be banned. You'd remember tire Watergate. So there's been some clarifications around that. So anything like water cooled wheel hubs or brake duct designs that would modify volume or actively change the airflow in the same way that the McLaren's PCM brake cooling does. That's not allowed. So teams are just gonna have to abandon any adaptive cooling tricks, and they're just gonna run standard brake and wheel cooling. And I think that also might upset the apple cart as well. McLaren's advantage has been due to the fact that they can keep their tires cool. So whether or not they can adapt to these clarifications is going to be interesting to watch over this weekend as well. Some minor aero and front wing upgrades that are coming to the track as well, almost across the board here. But mostly minor tweaks, so revised engine covers, being wing elements, similar to what Red Bull did at Suzuka and at Imola. McLaren already had large updates at Imola, so they'll bring smaller trim changes to this particular weekend. Mercedes has got some upgrades and they might tweak rear suspension compliance just after the changes that they did also at Imola. So yeah, quite a few interesting things are happening this weekend. I think it's going to be eventful. And I think we might come out of this weekend with a very different picture as to how the championship might play out for the rest of the season. So I'm excited for this race. I'm excited for it to get going. And yeah, I'll see everybody in the paddock.